With the help of Hashem, we are learning Megila Daf Yud Gimel. We left off on Daf Yud Beis, Amid Beis, 11 lines before the bottom of the Amid. Now we're going to begin learning about why Mordechay is called both Ish Yehudi, which is understood as a Jew that comes from the tribe of Yehuda, and also Ish Yemini. Ish Yemini meaning a Jew that comes from the tribe of Binyamin. It's got to be either or, and we're going to have the big Chazal that should call HaKofer Ba'avodah Zarah Nikra Yehudi. Yehudi isn't only a name given to Jews that come from Yehuda, but any Jew that completely denies Avodah Zarah, which is exactly what Mordechay stood for, is called a Yehudi. That's going to lead us into a lot regarding the Basya or Bisya, Bas Parai, and many names that are given to Moshe Rabbeinu as we have them recorded in Divrei Hayamim. It's very interesting that on one hand we have a rule that Ein Mikra Yoytze Midei Pshutai, that when you learn Psukim, aside of the so many layers of understandings, it also means exactly what it says. And you may not take a pasuk out of its literal meaning. By the way, there is one exception to that in the Chumash, but Divrei Hayamim, the Sefer Divrei Hayamim is not to be understood kipshutai. That's the lachatchila way of learning it, and we're going to learn such a pasuk in Divrei Hayamim that is speaking about the names of Moshe Rabbeinu. We're going to learn why Esther was called Esther. Was her name Esther? Was her name Hadassah? We're going to see that Esther, aside of her being Mordechai's cousin, which is not written in the Gemara, that Esther was also Mordechai's wife, and she remained his wife even during the time she was married against her will to Achashverosh. We're going to learn a lot about Esther not revealing that she was Jewish, and all of the attempts that were made by Achashverosh to get her to reveal her identity. We're going to learn the story of the Simanim that Yaakov gave to Rachel to try to circumvent the fact that the future father-in-law was a deceiver. Yet Lavan did deceive Yaakov because Rachel gave those simanim to Leah, and looking at it from a certain angle, it's viewed as an act of tremendous modesty and humility on behalf of Rachel. We're going to learn the details of what Haman told Achashverosh, how Haman slandered the Jewish people to Achashverosh in his attempt, which he succeeded, to convince the king to make this terrible decree of annihilating the Jewish people, and much, much more. Chevra, it's a gewaldige daf. We are going through the Megillah. So again, on Daf Yud Beis Amid Beis, it's the last word in the medium-sized lines. It's also 11 lines before the bottom of the Amid. When it says in the Megillah, continues the Gemara, that that the king appointed officers. This is in his attempt now to find a new wife after he killed Vashti. So says the Gemara, Amar Rav, what's the meaning of the pasuk? Pasuk in Mishlei, that kol arum, the word arum here means someone who's wise, someone who's prudent. That a prudent person does things with das, does things with knowledge. But uksil, but a foolish person, yifrois iveles, spreads his foolishness, makes it known to all what type of fool he is. The contrast between the wise and the fool, says the Gemara, kol adam yaseh b'das. That refers to King David, to David HaMelech. Regarding David HaMelech, it says, Vayoimru lo yavada v'yivakshu la'adoini HaMelech nar psula. David HaMelech in his old age got very cold, and he wanted to get married. And as Rashi points out, the words that he used in his search of a wife made it clear that he was looking for one wife, and he was going to pick one, and he was going to marry her. And therefore, since people knew that either their daughter will be chosen or rejected, it's an either or, and everyone wanted their daughter to be the wife of David HaMelech, so it was very effective. Whoever had a daughter, Aisanihali would bring the daughter, and with the hope that David would choose his daughter for his queen. And in contrast to that, says King Solomon in Mishlei, Ukasil, that a foolish person is so foolish that he makes everyone know that he's a fool. Yifrois, Ivela spreads his foolishness. That goes to Achashverosh. Tichsiv, regarding Achashverosh, in this verse it says, Vayafked HaMelech Pekidim, that he sent out officers. And it was clear from the message that he sent that he was planning to have a relation with every single maiden. And then he would pick one to be his wife. No one would send his daughter. So Kolman Dahabalei Barato, Itmeramine, people hid their daughters from Achashverosh because he made it clear with his foolishness that he wasn't just going to take a look at the options and pick one, that he was going to have a relation with each one and only then choose which one will be his wife. It says in the Megillah, Ish Yehudi, there was a Yid, and Yehudi, at least here is to be understood from the tribe of Yehuda, Chaye b'Shushan Abira, and it continues, Ushmai, right, Mordechay, ben Yair, ben Shimi, ben Kish, and then it says, Ishimini, a Benjamite, a Benjaminite, a Yid from the tribe of Binyamin. So first of all, normally you mention a person by his name, Ben, his father's name. You want to go up, Ben, his Zayda's name. And if you want to really go all the way back to Binyamin, okay, so knock yourself out. Write the son of the son of the son, and go all the way back to Yemini. Why are we picking only Yair, Shimi, and Kish? So that's the kasha, Maika Amar. Elyahu, if you want to give us yichus, koi, then liyacha seva azal ad Binyamin, then go all the way back up. Why are you picking only those four bearers? Ella, Maishnahani, Tana, Kulan, Al Shumai, Nikra. So we learned in a Braisa that all of these names is really referring to him himself. Ben Yair, not that his father's name was Yair. Mordechay was a Ben Yair, meaning Ben, he was a son. Sheheyir, a name, Sheyisol b'Tefilla, that lit up the eyes of the Jewish people through his prayer. Ben Shimi is also in reference to Mordechay. Ben, he was a son, he was a member of our nation. Sheshama El Tefillah, that God listened to his prayers. Ben Kish, the word Kish means Tanach, means Shehikish al Sharei Rachmim, that he knew how to bang on the doors of mercy, and v'niftachulay, and they were open to him. And now the kasha is Karele Yehudi. Almami Yehuda Kasi. Yehudi means it comes from the tribe of Yehuda. The Karele Yemini. Almami Binyamin Kasi. Which tribe is he from? And the Gemara gives various answers. Answer number one, Amar Rav Nachman, that Mordechai Mukhtar Bini Musayhaya, he was crowned with names. Crowned with names means that, as we'll see, there's a paternal lineage and there is a maternal lineage. And even though normally we follow the paternal lineage, but when a tribe produces such an offspring, they boast that we were the ones who gave birth, who brought about such a person. In other words, each Shevet was taking credit for the existence of Mordechai, as the Gemara explains. And actually, Amar Rabba, normally when the word Amar comes before the name, it implies something new. This is not something new. This is a continuation. He's explaining that Amar Rabba bar Barchana, Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, that this is the pshat in Rav Nachman. Aviv mi Binyamin. True, his paternal lineage was from Binyamin. His father was from Binyamin. His mother came from the tribe of Yehuda. V'Rabbanan Amri, something similar, that he was crowned. So he crowned himself with both. And the Chachamim say, Mishpachis Mizgarei Zubazu, that each tribe was fighting to take credit for him. So that's the two pshatim over here. Either he was taking pride by the fact that he comes both from one and from the other, and also that his forefathers each took pride in the grandson. Mishpachas Yehuda Meres, that Ano Godim the Misyaled Mordechai, we were the ones that caused Mordechai to be born, interestingly, and according to this, not because the maternal lineage was taka from Yehuda, which is a fact, but because of an event, as we learned also in Tanya, Igeres Chafei, that when Shimi ben Geda sided in the revolt with Avshalom and spoke terribly to David when David needed to run away from Yerushalayim. And yet David HaMelech in his life, David L'Shimi ben Geda, David HaMelech did not kill him. As David HaMelech said, it wasn't Shimi who cursed me, but it was God who told him to curse me. That's the whole proof of the Alter Rebbe. That Kishitas HaBaal Shem Tov, that Hashgacha Pratis means that even when a human being exercises his or her freedom of choice, for which they will be held accountable for, but the recipient of that choice has to view it that it's not the person who wronged me, but it was God who chose for that to happen to me. Kisipur Yosef HaTzadik. And coming back over here, the fact that David did not kill then Shimi ben Geda, who was from the tribe of Binyamin, And during the following years, Shimi ben Gera had children from whom Mordechay came. So the tribe of Yehuda said, it's because of us that Mordechay is in the world. Umishpachas Binyamin Amara, Pashit, that we take pride in Binyamin because he was a Benjaminite. His paternal lineage brought him back to the Shevet of Binyamin. Indeed, Ish Yemini, Mina Kaasi. Rava gives another approach. That Knesset Yisrael Amra Le'idach Yisa. That, not that the Jewish community were both fighting over the honor, it's because of me that Mordechay is in the world, or he comes from my lineage, but actually both Shevet Binyamin and Shevet Yehuda, both at a time were very not happy with Mordechay. And as the Gemara says, that Ru'u ma'asali Yehudi, the collective Jewish people, the other tribes used to say, look at what this member of Yehuda did to us. So they linked their complaint at a moment, at a time, not only towards Mordechay, but they pointed out, and therefore we're going to blame the whole Shevet Yehuda. And they also had a complaint against Shevet Binyamin. Look at what this Benjaminite paid me. Now, what was their taina against Mordechay? Mordechay saved the Jewish people. So, yesh v'yesh, depends how you look at reality. So this is the perspective that the story folded itself out by Mordechay refusing to bow down to Haman. And when Haman made the decree for people to bow down to him, as we just spoke out a few dafim ago, like the Gemara tells us elsewhere regarding the Nebuchadnezzar and Salem, it wasn't l'shem avodah zarah, but he was demanding a certain high amount of kavod. People should bow down to him. And Mordechay, like Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, didn't even want to do that. We only bow down to God. It's like a srach, it's like connected to something that it looks like an avodah zarah. And Haman was outraged by the fact that Mordechay HaYehudi did not bow down to him. Now really there's many more Midrashim about that. There was a Midrash somewhere that Haman actually was the slave of Mordechay. There was some prior event in which he became subservient to him. And the document was written in the bottom of the shoe of Mordechay. And when Haman demanded of Mordechay to bow down, he picked up a shoe and he showed him the sole of a shoe in which it says, you're my slave, you should bow down to me. And with all of the details, the bottom line is that some Jews felt, let's blame the Jew. Why do the Goyim hate the Jews? It's the Jews' fault, because they do this or because they don't do that. So that's a old machla. And they said, Ma'asali Yehudi. Look at what this Yehudi said, and Daf Yud Gimel. What was their complaint against the tribe of Yehuda? Mamish, like we mentioned above. The fact that David HaMelech, who rightfully could have killed Shimi ben Gera, but he didn't. He didn't, because he celebrated the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov. And because of that, Shimi ben Gera had an opportunity to father more children, from whom came ultimately Mordechai HaYehudi. So they complained, why didn't David kill Shimi? Top line on Yud Gimel, this Yalid Minei Mordechai, which therefore brought about ultimately the birth of Mordechai from the tribe of Binyamin. The Mikane Bei Haman, that is provoking Haman. And Uma Shilum Liyamini, they were upset at what the tribe of Binyamin paid the Jewish people in a negative way, and their taina was the Likatle Shaul Agag, Shaul HaMelech, who was in control of and had Agag in his hands, and who Taka should have killed him, who he lost his kingdom because of it, and because of him not killing Agag, Agag had an opportunity to make a woman pregnant, and that fathered ultimately Haman. This Yalad Minei Haman, the Mitzayir Yisrael.
So, Rabbi, according to these two explanations, Shimi, when we say Ben Shimi, it is referring to Shimi ben Gera.
Could be. Very good, very good. So Ben Shimi, very good. The first pshat was, it's all Al Shemai. But the Gemara, when it was saying Al Shemai, Danny, did not explain Ishimini. Right? That's why the Gemara, even after explaining that Ben Yoed, Ben Shimi, Ben Kish, but the Ish Yehudi and the Ishimini remained tribal. Very good. Rabbi Yechanan Amar Lo'olam Ben Yamin Kasi. V'amai Kadol Yehudi. No, until now we were understanding that Ish Yehudi means there is a link to Shevet Yehuda. How is it possible? So whatever, the maternal lineage is Yehuda. The Yidden blamed David, the Yehudi, for not killing Shimi. They praised the fact that David did not kill Shimi. Now the Gemara is saying a whole new answer. Like today, why is a Jew called a Jew? Now, the word Jew means from Yehuda. That's the English of Yehuda is a Jew. Now, we are called Jews, by the way, either because the majority of the Jews now are probably from the tribe of Yehuda, even though we learned so many times together that the 10 tribes are not as lost as the way people think. They came back, at least some of them came back, but the majority of the Jewish people that were exiled in the Golos of Rome by Churban Bayesheni were from Shevet Yehuda. So we're Jews because we are from Shevet Yehuda. That's taka a probability. But the Gemara says over here that the word Yehudi or Jew is not only used to reference the tribe we come from, but it's because Al Shum Shekafar Ba'avodah Zarah, any person that completely denies idol worship is gifted with the name Yehudi. Because the word Yehudi means Amoidem, to God. And admitting to God, submitting to God, accepting God is by default denying any other power. And yet it's not a black and white, because again, the people that bowed down to Haman were not serving Avodah Zarah, but on a certain subtle level, it's connected to Azasrach of Avodah Zarah. And someone who's completely bottled only to God, what did the father of the Baal Shem Tov tell him as a child before he passed away? That you should fear nothing and no one other than God. That's a Yid. So Mordechay feared nothing and no one other than God. So he didn't bow down to Haman. And that's why he was gifted with the name Yehudi. Whoever denies completely any form of idol worship, right, has the schus to carry the name Yehudi. Now where do we find this?
Rabbi, can I ask you a question? Does the word Jew, it seems to come from the root word Hoda, which means gratitude and not an affirmation versus from Yehuda?
Gratitude to God. You're just missing the word God. Gratitude to God. Actually, the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, God's name is in the word Yehuda. So there's Hoida, the Dalet is from Hoida. You're saying good, but the Yud Kei Vav Kei is to God Almighty. No, it's gratitude to God, because there's only one power.
But the definition of Jew comes from that root word.
Yes, it does. The definition of Jew comes from Judah. Judah and Jew is the same. So it means either we are from the tribe of Judah, or the fact that we deny idol worship, we are gifted the name Judah, even if we don't biologically come from the tribe of Judah. And as it says, now this is a pasuk regarding Mishol, Hananiah, and Azariah that were not from the tribe of Yehuda, and yet it says that Isai, Guvrin, these are Yehudayin. And again, these three great tzaddikim who allowed themselves to be thrown into the furnace of fire, not to bow down, again, it's very similar. The Tselem of Nebuchadnezzar, the statue that they made in Nebuchadnezzar, was not made l'shem avodah zarah. He was not saying that he is a deity. Yet, if a person completely denies idol worship, will not bow down to anything other than to God. I want to tell you something. I know we're online in a public forum, but the Rebbe greeted every person whom he met, every person, even when he walked down the street. But there was a big difference. When a Yid walked down the street, one of the ways of the Rebbe greeting would be to nod with his head, and when you nod with your head, you put your head down. To a non-Jew, the Rebbe never nodded with his head. He would pick up his hand. He would always be nice. He would never put his head down. This is connected to this. Rav Shimon Pazi says the Gemara, Ki have a pasuk with Divrei Hayomim. Now that we established that the word Yehudi doesn't necessarily refer to someone who is coming from the biological tribe of Yehuda, but it also is gifted to people who are strong in their denial of Avodah Zarah. That's how he explained the following pasuk in Divrei Hayomim. So first of all, he said as an intro that Kol Divarecha, there is a pasuk that we will read that is speaking about a parent who had many children and many names, said no, that all of the names that we will mention is Echadheim. And as we'll see, there's a pasuk that's speaking about the mother of Moshe, not the biological mother of Moshe, but it's actually pronounced Bisya. Some people erroneously pronounce it Basya. We're speaking about the daughter of Parai. Right, the Jewish name is pronounced Basya, which also means Bas, Yudke, which is every Yid is the son and the daughter of God. Parai was a bit arrogant. Parai considered himself to be the God. So he named his daughter, she's the daughter of God. But anyways, it's the voweling in Divrei Hayamim is metachirik. So we'll pronounce it the way it's written there. So Bisya is considered the mother of Moshe, as we'll see the beautiful chazal that whoever raises a human being, even if they didn't give birth to them, it's considered as if they fathered and mothered them. And there's, and like we mentioned in the intro, on one hand, ein mikra yotzei midei pshutai. I'm saying there's only one exception for that in Chumash. Divrei Hayamim lechatchilas yotzei midei pshutai. That's what he's saying. That all of these words echatein, and we know how to expound it. And what's the pasuk? So it says ve'ishtoi, his wife, whose wife? Mared's wife. You know who Mared will mean over here? Another name to Kalev. And again, a very interesting Gemara. This Bechlal we know this from learning Chitas, that Kalev married Miriam, and they fathered Chur in that whole tragedy that Chur was killed. Our Gemara says here that Kalev married Basya. It's not a stira. He married Basya, Mistama, she passed away, and he married Miriam. But so Ishtoi, we'll see his name, HaYehudiya. Now, HaYehudiya is her name, not his Jewish wife. His wife's name is Yehudiya, and again, that will be the whole proof. Her name was Basya or Bisya. No, since she was Kleifer B'Avodah Zarah, the Torah called her, gave her a new name. Her name was Yehudiya. Today it's like Yehudis, Nistama. And Uviyolda, and she gave birth as Yered. Now the Pshat is the father of Gadol. We're going to see Yered is Moshe, and Gadol is Moshe. We'll see what the word father means. None of this means Kapshutai. Ve'es Chever, not she had another child Chever. No. The same child is called Chever. Avi Soichai, she's also called Soichai. We'll see what Avi means. Ve'es Yikusiel, Avi Zonoyach. Amazing. Ve'ela, look how it says, B'nei Bisya Basparei. These are the sons. And again, since in Divrei Hayamim, Mikra Yotzei Midei Pshutai, it doesn't mean that we are enumerating different sons. It's all the same. It's amazing that Tavshan Pei Beis, when we're learning this right now, we're mamish learning Shmais, we're learning the birth of Moshe Rabbeinu. And we know that he has many names. And here you have his many names, or some of his many names. We know not all the names I hear. We have in Sukkah, we had in Soita, Tuvia, remember Toiv. There are other names written in other places, but let's go there. Asher Lakach, again, the woman that was taken, that was married by Marid, and as we'll see, refers to Kalev ben Yefuna. Now, since we know from elsewhere that the daughter of Pari's name was Bisya, why is she called here Yehudiya? So that's the answer. Al Shum Shekafra B'Avodah Zarah. And that's how we know when it says in the Chumash that Vateret Baspalei Lirchitz Al Hayaor, and when she went then to bathe on the Nile, and that's where she encountered Moshe Rabbeinu. So we have the statement Amar Rabbi Yochanan, right? That's the whole sugya we have in Soita, that really she went there. She yarda Lirchitz Migiluli Beisavia. She went there to go to the mikvah. She went to cleanse herself from the idolatry of the house of her father. And it came together, and you are denying Avodah Zarah, you're cleansing yourself from it by going to the mikvah, you are automatically named Yehudiya. Like a Jew is we are all called Jews. Now Yolda, Frekti Gemara, she gave birth. Okay, I get it. You're telling me that it's all Moshe Rabbeinu. She didn't give birth to Moshe. Vaha Rabuya Rebi say she raised him. She raised him from 3 months. But she didn't give birth to him, so it says, think about exactly. From here we learn, whoever, what is chus, will raise an orphan, a boy, a girl, in her home. It's tantamount to as if they gave birth to them with so many. I mean, we're learning agadata, but it affects a certain amount of halach as well. How should a person treat their step parents? What's the mitzvah of kibbud ava'im? There's a lot over here. Okay, now Yered, let's go to all these names. You're telling me that it's all Moshe Rabbeinu. Yered goes to Moshe. Why is it called Yered? Yered means Sheyarad lehem liYisrael man b'yamav, that he brought down the manna to the Jewish people during his life. Gadol, why is, now it says Yered, the father of Gadol. Leave the word Av for later. Av is also a name of Moshe. Gadol is also a name of Moshe. Gadol shegadar pirtzisem shel Yisrael, that he closed, he fenced the breaches, because that's what a law is. A law is putting a geder, putting a boundary. A lot of the tzaras and the pain that our young people are feeling today is simply because parenting came to a point, tragically, where they think that to raise kids healthily, no limits. And that brings about a tremendous amount of suffering. And Moshe Rabbeinu was the lawgiver. Chever, you know what, also Moshe, why is he called Chever? Shechiber es Yisrael avim shebashamayim. Because he is the one that connects us to God in heaven. Again, it says Avi Soichai. I know that Sin, Samach, they are interchangeable letters. We'll leave the Av for later. The Av is also something. Soichai means he's called Soichai. Why was he called Soichai? Shenasolem li Yisrael kisukah. Because Moshe Rabbeinu was our sukkah. What does a sukkah do? It's a protective covering. Moshe Rabbeinu, whenever Hashem had a havamina of something not that positive from our perspective, he stopped it. Yikusiel, right? Because it means kaveh el Hashem, to have hope in God. Shekavu Yisrael lokeil b'yamav. He was the one that educated all of us to continuously have hope in God. Again, it says avi zonoyach. Let's leave the word av for later. Zonoyach. Zonoyach means to cast off, to throw off. Sheizniach avanisem shel Yisrael, that he managed to cast off all of our sins because he continuously inspired us to do tshuva. Now it says avi, 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 right? Because it says avi gadol, avi soichai, avi zonoyach, which means all on Moshe. He was an av b'toira. He was an av b'chachma. He was an av b'nevius. Amazing.
Chever be read as chaver, a friend?
Yeah, chever. Yeah. And now ve'ela b'nei bisya asher lokach mored. So here, let's go on the father. Kalev v'chi mored shemai v'halei kalev shemai. So Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm going to name him mored. Mored means a merida, a rebellion. That Yahweh kalev shemarad ba'atzas managlim. He on his own rebelled against the conspiracy of the other spies and let him marry Bas Paria, as we just began. She was called Yehudia because she shemarda bigelule beis avia.
Was this before? The Bas was followed in Magla?
Yeah, maybe before. Sure, doesn't matter. So he married her. It doesn't even matter when he married her, whether he married her before or afterwards. By then he already was married to Miriam. Doesn't matter. But he's called Mored. Okay, now we're coming back to the Megillah. When it says Asher Hogla mi Yerushalayim, we're speaking about Mordechay, and as Rashi points out that the right way of writing this down was Asher Heglasa, and it says Asher Hegla, which implies Amarava Shegala Ma'atzmoi, that Mordechay chose on his own to exile himself. We have this in the much later generations, who was the Abarbanel, that then there was Girus Sfard. He was allowed to stay in Spain, but he exiled himself. There was some pre-dedication of Mordechay to the community that he made sure that he should always be with the Yidden, even in an instance where he wasn't, so to say, thrown into the Golus as many others were. And it says regarding Mordechay, Vayehi Oymein. Oymein means he raised as Hadassah. So says the Gemara, you should know that throughout the Megillah, she's sometimes called Hadassah and sometimes she's called Esther. And Tanya Rav Meir Omer, really her name was Esther. V'lama nikra shema Hadassah, because tzaddikim in general are called Hadassah. Shenikru Hadassah. And v'cheinu Omer, a pasuk in Zechariah, v'hu Omer bein Hadassim, in reference here again to Mishol, Hananiah, and Azariah, who are tzaddikim. For many reasons. Al-Pi Kabbalah, the reason is because as we learned in Sukkah, that a Hadas are three leaves, that they come from one point, and the difference between Toya and Tikkun is exactly this Nakuda. In other words, it's a type of tzaddik from Olam HaTikkun, where you have a balance, where there's the right and the left and the center. Rab Yehuda Omer, Hadassah Shema. Why is she called Esther? Al Shem Shehoisa Masteres Devoreo. She concealed her origins. That was what Mordechay told her to do. By the way, there's a lot in the Mefarshim. Why did Mordechay tell her to conceal her origins? It's not so pashut. The pshat, just to link it to what we learned, Al-Pi Nigla, is that as we had on top of the Amid, that there were people that criticized Mordechay, that you are provoking jealousy, it's your fault. A Jewish woman that goes into the palace, she kept Shabbos, we'll see soon, she kept kosher. So Mordechay was afraid that if Achashverosh will know that she's Jewish, with all of her Jewish laws, he's going to also be not content with the Jewish people. Yeah. So that's one pshat why he told her, don't say that you're Jewish. Okay, weiter. It turned out phenomenal. It turned out that since she didn't say she's Jewish, when she brought it up, it had that amount of power to get Achashverosh to kill Haman. Okay. Al Shem Shoim Asteres says Devorah. Shenemar, as it says, Ein Esther Magedes es Ama v'Goymer. Rab Nechemya says her name was Hadassah. And why was she called Esther? Shahoyu umayso oilam koirim oisa. That's the name that the nations of the world gave her, because in many languages the moon is called Istahar. Istahar is also in Aramaic. And she looked beautiful like the moon. Understand that as you want. Weiter. Benazai Omer, Esther, lo yarucha, v'lo ketzara. She was average. Ela beinanis, just like a Hadassah. If you remember in the Sugya and Brachas and the Lamids, when Chana wanted to have a child, part of her prayer to God was to have an average child. She said, not too smart, not the opposite, not dumb, God forbid, not too tall, not too short. The beauty of moderation, of the middle, not extreme. Coming back to the Hadassim that has a 3, the third leaf represents the middle. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha Amar, that the reason why she's called a Hadassah is because she actually had some sort of greenish complexion. Esther Yirak Roikes Hoisa. And that's a hadas is hadas the only plant that has a greenish complexion? It means all of the above, including the fact that there was something actually that one might have argued did not make her that attractive, and that was amazing. That made her even more beautiful. So to counter that greenish complexion, v'chut shel chesed mashich halel. This is a gift. God endowed her with a certain grace. So there was something unique about her. So David is saying it sounds Sephardic. I think it sounds Ashkenazic. Why Sephardic? All right. Ke'eila, and then it says Ke'eila Ava'im, because why did Mordechay rest her? Right? Because she had no father and mother. And then it says Vaited, and when her father and mother passed away, that's mamish superfluous. If you just wrote she had no father and no mother, why does one not have a father and a mother? Because they passed away. So why did the Megillah have to write so no, it's to tell you that she was orphaned right away from the outset. When her mother became pregnant with her, means before she even came into the world, already her father passed away. At birth, in other words, she was raised from day one. Mordechay took her as a daughter. Now, of course, when she was 1 day old, Mordechay took her and to raise her. But Tanach, we learned in a Braisa, quoting the name of Rav Meir, that it wasn't just that Mordechay raised her when she was younger, but Bas also means bias. Mordechay married her. Al tikra labas ela labayis. V'chein oimer, as we have in the rebuke that Nasan HaNavi gave to David HaMelech for the fact that he had a relation with Bathsheba. So he gave him this whole story that there was a wealthy man who had everything he needed, and then he had a neighbor, Ul Rosh. There was a poor man, Ein Koil, who had nothing. Ki'im, only kafsa achas, one small lamb, ketana, asher kana, that he managed to buy, and vayichayeha, vatigdal imoy, and he loved this lamb so much that he gave it life, and he raised it together with his family, and umipitoi toichel, and he shared his bread with it, umikoisoi tishta, and this little shepsela drank from his cup, ubecheikoi tishkav, and it laid in his bosom, vatehiloi kabas, and it was like his daughter. Now hold on. You don't lay with your daughter. So mishum de becheikoi tishkav havalei labas? Question mark. Elet means that was the whole mashal of Nasan HaNavi regarding Bathsheba, that bas sometimes is a way of writing a bias, a house. Right? Kara ishtoi beisoi. Elo labayis. Hachinami labayis. So they were married. And that's the whole Tosfos in the beginning of Ksubas, that l'chayda for the 3 big sins, you have to give your life, including adultery. And if Esther was not married, then there's no aroyas. But if Esther was married, which she was, and she remained married to Mordechay, so why did she not have to give up her life? That's the whole vart, that when it comes to a woman getting raped, or if there's a relation that's being imposed on her against her will, which is exactly what Achashverosh did with all of these women, including with Esther, even after he was married. She didn't want to marry him. So because of the concept that a woman, if she's not involved, she's considered passive, karka oilam, she's not obligated to give up her life, and according to the Rambam, she's not allowed to give up her life. Whenever you don't have to go on Mesiras Nefesh, le Rambam, you're not allowed, because then it's like committing suicide. Yes, David.
Yes,
he did, and then he married her.
So it's married
No, it's not. It's not like marrying your stepdaughter. That's the way you can word it. He raised a Yiddish daughter, and he saw that she is fit to be his wife, and he married her. Okay? Yes?
I don't know if it's shayach, but isn't there a difference between what the woman and a man is raped between being in a city and a field?
That's in the Chumash. No. No. In other words, if a woman who had the option to call for help and help would have come and she doesn't call for help, that's one thing. Esther had no one to call out to help for. He was the king. He made a decree that he's capturing women, and then that's it. And he said it like we learned today. He said it outright. I'm not going to marry them. I'm first going to have a relation with everyone. He said that in public. And then I'm going to choose the one I'm going to marry. Now, today we're living in a very, very unhealthy world. That's crazy. Even if there's such a thing's happened today. There was no such a thing then. Weiter. Now what Haggai gave to Esther, this 7 maidens. So Rava says to point out that Esther made sure to be observant. There's a lot that's missing here. Normally when you live, no matter where you live, you know what day of the week it is. But Esther, to make sure, for some reason she was afraid she might forget what day of the week it is, so she asked for 7 maidens, and she knew this maiden only comes on Sunday, that one on Monday, and which one comes on Shabbos. And that is to make sure that she'll know what day of the week it is. And then it says, Vayishaneha the esnariseh, which means Haggai changed. There was something that he did different for her and for her 7 helpers, 7 maidens. Amar Rav, you know what that was? You know what he did different? Now it's very important to remember that even though, as we'll see, we have to move quicker, that Esther did not disclose that she's a Jewish woman. Everyone knew that she grew up in the house of Mordechay. Everyone knew that. She was taken from his home. People didn't know that she's Jewish. She had this greenish complexion. She looked like the moon. She didn't look like part of the family. Shitaka was not his child biologically. But when you grow up in a Jewish home and you are familiar with Jewish foods, so even if I don't know that you're Jewish, to please you, I'll give you kosher foods. That's the pshat over here. So he made a change, knowing that she was brought up in a kosher home, he gave them kosher food. Shmuel says the opposite. That you know what change he made? That shehechila kodlei de chazire, he gave her fatty chazir. Dafka, since he knew that she came from a Jewish home, the one thing they didn't want, this is before Haman's decree, is there should be a Jewish woman. No one knew she's Jewish herself. They just knew she was brought up. So they brought her chazir. And the last Tosfos says, V'chas v'shalom hi lo yoiso yechelas. We're not saying that she ate it. We're just saying the tzadas that she went through. She was forced in a marriage that she did not want to be in. She was a married woman. There's many levels to the mama. She didn't want to be there. And the food that they gave her was not kosher, which means that she ate very little. Rabbi Yechanan Omar, what did she eat? Zir'oinim. And I should know that there's a minig amongst many people today that on Purim you have sesame bagels. Because Esther survived in the palace because it was chazer treif there by eating seeds. And as it says that Vayehi Hameltzar Noise Espas Pagam, right? This is referring to what happened with Daniel and Hananiah and Mishael and Azariah when they were noch in the palace of Nebuchadnezzar. They also kept kosher, and that meant that the bread that was allocated to all of the servants was taken from them, and all they had left is Noise Lahem Zeroinim. Then it says regarding what they did to all of the women. Shisha Chadashim, for 6 months they would soak in Shemen HaMoed, in oil of Moed. What is Shemen HaMoed? Rabbi Chia bar Abba Omar, it means sitakat. Sitakat is balsam oil, which is very expensive oil. But they had all of these women bathe for 6 months, soak for 6 months in this oil. Rafuna Omar, that Shemen HaMoed means a certain type of oil that makes your hair fall out. The body hair fall out. Shemen, and that comes from olive oil, that came from olives that never reached a third of their maturity before you pluck them off the trees. And indeed, that is authenticated with Abraisa. Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Omer, that Shemen HaMoed also means Anpakinoin. Anpakinon is a name of an oil that we will learn about in Masechta Menachos regarding the oils that could be used in the Beis Hamikdash, inferior oils that cannot be used, and we defined what is this Anpakinoin. It's shemen, it's oil that comes from an olive that never reached a third of its maturity. So when it comes to eating it, it's considered inferior. But why did he have them bathe in it? Because it has this upside. Why do people smear themselves with the shemen hamoed? Because shemashir es haseyar, because it removes the hair and uma'adan es habasar, and it causes one's skin to have a special shine. Now it says be'erev hiba, these maidens came to Achashverosh in the evening, u'baboker hishava, and then they would return to the Beis Hanashim in the morning. So Amar Rabbi Yechanan, in spite of the fact that Achashverosh was doing something what was very immoral, and the fool Nach didn't cover it, but migenusei shel oiser rasha, from the disgraceful account, at least we can learn something. We can see something positive. And what's the positive? That he did not have marital relations at the day. Clearly, that she found favor in everyone's eyes. We had this above on Daf Zayin regarding Ruach HaKodesh. In other words, how do we know that everyone found her b'cheint? Because no one knew which nation she came from. And there was something so special about her, people wanted to claim credit. Every nation said, she looks like a woman from our nation. That she was taken to the king Achashverosh. El Beis Malchusoi, when did that happen? In the 10th month, which is the month of Teves. So there's a Hashgacha Pratis involved. And what's the Hashgacha Pratis? That Teves is the month, Yerach, because of the cold, that more than any other month, that Shenehene Guf Min Guf. So that in itself, I know she was not every night he was with another woman, but the fact that her first relation with Achashverosh, from Achashverosh's perspective, was at a time that biologically it's that much more beneficial of having a relation. So that's more a reason why Al Pidarach HaTeva, these are all Nisim, Melubish and Teva, he wanted to marry Esther. Vayehav HaMelech es Esther mikol hanoshim, that he loved her more than all the other nashim. And Vatisachein v'chesed lefanav mikol hapsulos. So we have an inconsistency. And really, Achashverosh wanted psulos. Now, the fact that Esther was not a psula, she was not a psula because she was married, but he was looking for psulos. So if the pasuk should have said both times, Vayev HaMelech es Esther mikol hapsulos, or write both times, Vatisachein v'chesed lefanav mikol hanoshim. Why are we using both expressions? Amarav, that bikesh litam tam psula ta'am, ta'am ba'ula ta'am. Weiter. Vayasam alach Mishnah Gadol, he made a big Mishnah. Why did he make this big Mishnah? Why did he make this big party? Says our Gemara that this party was made because since she did not tell him her origins, it touched something, it provoked something. He became that much more curious. He needed to find out what nation she comes from. The whole Mishnah was not made to celebrate the fact they got married. He was trying to create a setting in which he's going to find out where she's from. Avad Mishtaya, he made a party, but it didn't work. She didn't tell him what nation she's from. So you know what he did? Dali Karga, he lifted up some taxes. He taxed everyone to death. So during the party, and for her, he says, I'm doing this, there's a tax exemption. He was trying to show her how generous he is, how kind he is, with the hope that she will reciprocate by feeling more connected to him and trusting him with her nation, which he didn't do. Well, like Aliyah, she didn't reveal. 3 lines from the bottom. Shadar Pardishnei, Rashi says, Pardishne means gifts. He began to send gifts, not to her. He was just showing her how kind he is and how generous, and he was sending gifts. And ironically, who did he turn to get advice? To Mordechay. Mordechay was a big chacham. So when it says afterwards, that he gathered women for a second time, now this verse is written after he married Esther, which makes absolutely no sense. Now, if he had relations with other women, that's none of my business. But the Megillah should not have recorded it. Why does it say that after he married Esther, again there was this gathering and meeting new women? Where did that come from? So the Gemara says that was the advice that Mordechay gave him. That Ozel v'shakal eitzim Mordechay. That what? She's telling Mordechay, I married this woman. I chose her already. She's withholding information. How do I get her to open up? I showed her how kind I am. I made a party for her. I gave gifts. I did this. So Mordechay says you have to make her jealous. And how do you make a woman jealous? Go with another woman. A woman is only jealous with the yerech, which means when she sees that her husband is getting intimate with another woman. Now, why did Mordechay really do that? Maybe he wanted Achashverosh to find another woman and let his wife be. That was what he was hoping. It's amazing what God did. And none of it worked. And she never said who she is, as it says, the last line in the Amid, she never revealed which nation she comes from. Amar Rabbi Lazar, my dechsev chavre daf yud gimel amid beis. Oy gewalt lo yigra meit tzadik einov, that God never takes his eyes off the tzaddik. Now, God never takes his eye off anything. Everything is b'ashgacha pratis. It means that by a tzaddik it's revealed hashgacha pratis. You can, when we are able to see, this happened to this person because of that schus. That's a gilui. And says the Gemara, look at the evolution of things. Rachel had an extraordinary amount of tznius, as will be defined in the story. And because of that, she merited to have Shaul, who was also an extraordinary, modest man. And Shaul came along Esther. And the tznius that we are referring to is that if Esther would have told Achashverosh where she's from, just understand that. As we'll see, Esther came from the family of Shaul. We know that because Esther, the Midrash says, Esther was a cousin of Mordechay. In other words, we learned today in the Gemara she was raised by him. That says Befedish. She was his wife. She was a cousin. Mordechai's lineage goes back to Shaul. When the king chose Esther, had she told that she comes from royal lineage, it would have been to her advantage. Modesty means if I have a quality, people don't have to know about my quality. So her not sharing her lineage was a tremendous act of modesty. And all of that came from Shaul, that came from Rachel. Now every story has many sides to it. There is Yaakov's perspective of the story that we're going to read. We're not focusing on Yaakov's perspective. We're going to focus on Rachel. Techsiv, it says that when Yaakov and Rachel met on Parshas Vayetze v'yagid Yaakov l'Rachel, Yaakov tells Rachel these words, mamish don't make sense, ki achi avia, who, that he is the brother of her father. Guys, Yaakov was not the brother of Lavan. Right? Yaakov was the son, the mother, Rivka, was the sister. He was the son of Rivka. Rivka was Taka, her, meaning Rachel's father's sister. Ella Amarla, what happened was like this, that Yaakov tells Rachel, Minsavali, marry me. He proposed to her, and she said yes. But she right away said, it's not going to be simple. Miu Abba Ramoyu, my father is a deceiver. You will never be able to outwit him. So Yaakov tells Rachel, no, if I have to, I can outwit him. I'm his brother in Ramois. I'm not intimidated. I don't feel inferior to that type of going through the world. Achiv ana b'Ramois. So she right away said, oh my gosh, I don't want to marry that. And is it allowed? Amrullah, mi shari l'tzadikin l'saguya b'reimusai. Guys, l'sagoya means to act. No, she knew that in his heart, he's not a deceiver. But even to act deceitfully, you are allowed to do it? And he said, yes, you are. And he quoted the pasuk in Shmuel. And we have something very similar in Tehillim Yudches. But in Shmuel it says, im navar, that's with the pure person, ti tavar, you should act purely. However, im ikesh, with a crooked person, ti fatol, or ti tafal, act crookedly. So first of all, he established that one, right, turning the other cheek is very not Jewish. In other words, if someone is coming and acting crookedly with you, out crooked them, protect yourself. So Amar Law, so now Yaakov wanted to find out, Ma'idem Musa, where do you see that he will deceive and therefore not allow us to get married? What will he do? So Amar Law, she foresaw, she says that Isli Achsa, I have a sister, the Kashishimonoi, that's older than me. And Veloy Minsev Li Mekama, my father will not allow me to get married before her. He'll say he'll allow. He's not honest. In other words, if he would say it upright, there's nothing to be concerned about. But at the last moment, he's going to deceive. So knowing that is going to happen, so Masar Allah Simanim, so Yaakov made with Rachel, he gave her some sort of secretive signs. We have a Midrash that says that that's the source of the boyin yad and boyin regel. It was something to do with the thumb and the big toe, and maybe even the earlobe. Later we have these inyanim in the Torah when it comes to the purification of the mitzvah. But there was some sort of simon, there was a sign, whatever that was, that they made up. And if Rachel will do this, Yaakov will do that, and they'll know that, each one will know that this is Rachel and that's Yaakov. Lahavdil, who has these simanim, the masons, they have these simanim. Certain simanim, the way they shake their hands, and they know who they are. So Kimata Laila, when the night came, and indeed Lavan deceived Yaakov, and it was not Rachel. So before Leah went to be with Yaakov, so Amra, she said to herself, Hashta is michsefa achsoi, my sister will become ashamed. Now my husband will be deceived. She didn't say that. She said she was concerned here about her sister. Her sister should not be ashamed. So what did she do? Is misartinu nihila. She gave over her samanim. She conveyed them all to Leah. And that is considered a tremendous act of sacrifice, to the point, right, Keva Rachel, that the reason why God promised, to whom did God promise that Shavu Banim Ligvolecha, was to Rachel because of this act. That she was not jealous with her sister. The opposite of jealousy. She was very humble. As we just learned on Amud Aleph. And V'hainu d'chsiv, Vayihi ba'boiker, V'hinehi Leah. What do you mean? She was only Leah in the morning, but at night she was not Leah. Michlal da'ad hashtalav Leah. And the answer is no. The reason why he did not know it's Leah because of the simanim. Elametech simanim shemasar Rachel Leah le'hava yoda ad hashta. And therefore, since there was a tremendous you have so much in Kabbalah, Yaakov thought he's having a relation with Rachel. The kavana that one has while they are with the spouses have a tremendous effect. Who became the Bechar? For the Pishnayim, Yosef Atzadik. Yosef was the first son of Rachel. So the Zohar says exactly because when he had a relation with Leah, he thought he's having it with Rachel. So therefore the firstborn didn't go fully to Reuven because his kavana was not with Leah. So now this act of modesty, what was the lo yigra mitzadik einov? What's the revealed hashgacha pratis lefikach zachsa v'yasef emenu shol gavaldik. Rachel, Shol was from the Shevet Binyamin, which is Binyamin ben Rachel. Why and what sneers do we find by Shol? It says regarding Shol, it's amazing. Shol went out to look for donkeys that his father lost, and he couldn't find it, so he went to the Navi. Hasidim are familiar with this. People that are not Hasidim, they don't know we come to the Rebbe for everything. Should I buy this? Should I go there? That's what happened. He couldn't find his donkey, so he went to the Navi to ask him, where are my donkeys? And when he met Shmuel anointed him to be a king. And when he came back to his uncle, he didn't say a word about that. Oh, honey, how was your day? Well, today I was anointed to be a king. He didn't say that. That's called modesty. Modesty means you're not, when you have something unique, special, you don't show it off. So that was a midah toiva, or that was a gift, midah keneged midah, because of Rachel's tznius, and Shaul's tznius brought about, like we said, Esther, who would have benefited by her telling Achashverosh that she comes from noble blood, but she didn't. When Hashem assigns greatness to a person, this is connected to our memory. No, it's God rewarded, and it goes down forever. As it says, they will sit forever, right? And they will be exalted. And this pasuk speaking about how certain exalted positions and good midos keep on going down the line, but if a person becomes haughty, if a person becomes arrogant, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu mashpilei, God lowers them down, as it says, that if they are bound in chains, this is the hemshech of that pasuk. On one hand, the descendants of great will be great, and on the other hand, they're going to be bound in chains. So without effort, the child can yarshin the gedula of his father. But with negative effort, specifically arrogance, they lose it. Then it says in the Megila Vesmaim and Mordechay Esther Oisa that Esther always did the biddings of Mordechay, what does that mean? As all married men know, that if there is what we call maras, if a woman who makes a bedika or finds kesem, blood, and she has a doubt whether that color is halachically dam nida or not, she shows it to a rav who has shimush and maras, or to a beis din. So even though Esther then was forcefully married to Achashverosh, she, as we will learn, continued to live like a married woman with Mordechay, and she was still careful and to show her maras to the Chachamim, to make sure that when she's with Mordechay, it's kedasu kedin. And that's a big novelty, because you would think that a woman who is nebach in such a position will say, anyways, what's going on is not kosher. I'm with Achashverosh. I'm a married woman with another man. But she was still careful to make sure that when she was Mordechay, everything was ka'alocha. Kasher hoisa ba'amna itoi, just as she was when she was raised with him. So here, Amar Rava bar Leima, in the name of Rav, that when she would leave the bosom of Achashverosh, whenever she was able to, she went to the mikvah. Going to the mikvah to cleanse herself from Achashverosh, and for that she needed to keep the halachas of Taras HaMishpacha. If she only would have been during that period of time married to Achashverosh, only with Achashverosh, if she, so to say, would have gotten the get from Mordechay, then there would be no need to show any dam to anyone. By Yom HaMahim, in those days, Mordechay was sitting with Shara Melech in the gate of the king. And at that time, Kotzaf, Bigza's son, Vaseresh, these two ministers, they became angry against Achashverosh. Why were they that angry? And we'll see, they were that angry that they conspired to kill him. So Amar Rab Chiya bar Abba, Amar Rab Yochanan. I want you to know that 2 times in history, everything is bashgacha pratis. The point here is that even human feelings is all by God. There was one time that God caused a master to react with a lot more anger than normal against the servants in order to set up something that will be to the benefit of a tzaddik, and that's the story of Yosef. I mean, why did Paroi put the Sarah Mashkin and the Sarah Tabachim in jail? What? Because there was a pebble in the bread, because there was a fly in the wine, like Rashi says. That for that, you put your minister in jail. That shouldn't have happened. Hashem made Pari very angry, because Hashem wanted for those ministers to be in jail, as we know the story in the Chumash. Ultimately, for Yosef to interact with them, v'chulei. Shenemar, as it says, that Vishami Tonu not Ivri, so they were the ones that brought Yosef to the attention of Pari. So that was one time in history that Hashem made a master feel more anger than he should have normally felt, that he would have normally felt. And similarly, there was another time, that's our story, that Hashem put in the heart of Avadim. Avadim here means the servants of Achashverosh, Bigza's son Vaseresh, that they felt they had a problem with their master beyond the norm. Let me just give you spill the beans. That Achashverosh, after he married Esther, was so infatuated with Esther that he was with her every night. And these 2 servants, they could not get sleep because of it. He was asking for water, whatever was happening there was no ruyakite in the palace. And that's why they got so mad. Our master he got married as a newlywed, he's not letting us live, he's so busy, let's kill him. You don't normally react that way. God put it in their heart to attempt to kill him for Mordechay. As it says, Mordechay. And Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Bigza's son Vaseresh, these two, they were ministers. They were high servants in the court of Achashverosh. Shnei Tarsim Havo. Tarsim is the name of a nation. And therefore, like we learned also above on Daf Zayin, they spoke in their language, thinking that no one knows. And they said that from when this Esther came, we were sleep deprived. Achashverosh is too busy with her. And the only way out for them was to kill him. So Bava, not to let us, let's get poison, and we're going to put it basefel in a bowl, and Kadesh Yom to kill him, Patav, and then we'll get a good night's sleep. And what they did not know is that Mordechay was a member of the Sanhedrin, right? The members that sit in the chamber of the huge stone, and that's where they sat in the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore, now it doesn't mean that every member of the Sanhedrin has to know all the 70 languages. We'll learn this in Sanhedrin. We want to have 2 or 3, and he was one of those few that knew all the languages, including Lashon Tursi. Now, Omar Loi, more details, it's late, is written in the Marsha Chadushei Agadis. Just Bekitza, what happened is for them to be able to follow through with their plan to poison Achashverosh, they would have to change their shifts of work. And the way their shifts, the way it was set by the court, would not allow them to carry through their plans. And the way Mordechay proved to the king that they were conspiring to poison him was by showing the king that, look, they're not working at their allocated time. Omar Loi means one told the other that our shifts are not juxtaposed close enough for us to be able to go and carry through the plan. So Omar Loi, so the other one told, we're gonna do something that no one will know. We're gonna change the times of our shifts. And therefore, that will allow us to follow through with their plans. And in other words, when Mordechay came and said, they're planning to kill you, how did he prove it? So they investigated. That is what they investigated. They went to their allocated times and they were talking not working, and that gave credibility to the rest of what Mordechay said. Let's skip another line. That's the beginning of the third chapter, right? When we in Lubavitch, we only knock on Haman when it says Haman ben, or Haman with a title. So Gidel, right? Gidel Amalek Shverish, just Haman ben Hamdasa. So Achar means after God first put the remedy into place, after Esther was the queen, only then came about the tzadis. The concept that God will always bring the remedy prior to the makkah. As it says, as that as I heal the Eden, only then will I reveal the sin of Ephraim and punish Ephraim, because the remedy is there. When it comes to the nations of the world, first Makkah Oisam, and only then, as it says, and only then, and I know we are behind, but we'll stop over here. To be continued.